Council informational meeting, Tuesday, March 8th, to order. First item on our agenda today will be a staff report from Jim David, our Legislative Operations Manager.
Good afternoon. The bill to impose a sales tax on remote sellers was overwhelmingly approved by the House Representatives last week. It now awaits the governor's signature. The penny for infrastructure bill, House Bill 1116, was defeated on the Senate floor late this morning. It received only 10 affirmative votes. This follows yesterday's passage in Senate Commerce of 5-2. The Senate approved House Bill 1137 this afternoon. This bill changes the license plate distribution formula by reducing the municipal's portion and redistributing almost $1.5 million to townships and counties. And finally, the Senate passed House Bill 1091 this morning, this bill allows TNCs to operate in South Dakota. Since the bill was amended in the Senate, it will need to be concurred with in the House. And then today actually is the last day for a bill to pass both houses of the legislature. Friday they will recess and they'll reconvene on March 29th to reconsider any of the governor's vetoes. Be happy to answer any of your questions.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Jim. We'll move on to City Council open discussion. Any items for open discussion today? Councilman Jameson.
Thank you. A couple items, if I could. I've got an agenda approval form in front of me for extending the pilot program for the kids riding free on the buses. And Councilor Rolfing is giving me sign language saying that he wants to sign it as well. So anyway, that's going to be coming next week. It is. And there's some other information. I'm getting sign languages from all kinds of people in the audience, but signals, yeah, grid. Anyway, I think the council, we had discussed it before and agreed that we'd like to continue it for one more year. And there's more study that's coming, more information that we'll have later, but in order to get that process moving, look for that to be coming on the agenda. Any questions with that? Let me know, yeah?
Councilor Uffenbach.
You call it a pilot. Are we going to continue to call it a pilot, or that's your study part of it? You want to go one more year on studying it?
Well, it would be continued to be called a pilot until a definitive, long-term plan has been laid out. But in the ordinance or the resolution, it would be, or the ordinance here, it would still be just, continued as free at no charge. So we'll call it a pilot ourselves, I suppose, but with that intention is to keep studying it to make sure that it's being used as we intended it and maybe the long-term solutions work out.
Okay.
Councilor Kiley.
I think it is wise to continue to refer to it as a pilot because we were a little late in getting started last year with it, so we didn't get a full year in. So I think it would be nice to see what the results are with us getting off to an early start and having a full year.
And as well, including the school systems and letting the children know about it. Last year, we kind of did it after they were out of school, and the school board has been very cooperative and willing to participate in that discussion and get that information out. So I think it's a good deal. So I want to get okay. Second is I wanted to bring up we have the parking strip ordinance coming. And last time we had our discussion, there was some information about mailboxes that maybe wasn't included in the discussion. Councilor Anderson brought that up. Some of us on the committee felt like we really didn't need to cover it, but it's clear we do. And Diane Bast has worked up a draft to that piece. Have you all seen that by chance? Y'all, listen. Well, I want to make sure you get it. But the intentions are really to address what's existing already for mailboxes because there's a lot of them that are not complying with the parking strip ordinance. What happens with new ones? What if the city damages it, like they do with moving snow and other mailboxes? What happens? and I think she's addressed it very well, but we'd kind of left those little details out, but Diane's worked up a draft proposal, but I'll make sure the rest of the council get it and you can review it. But I think we're going to be on track, right, for next week to have the first reading. And I've had a couple phone calls about the ordinance and people worried about significant changes, but I don't see this as a major significant change. It's good clarification, but any questions about that? Good, thank you.
Councilor Kiley?
And on that note, regarding land use, we have tackled a pretty big issue there, so it looks like we are going to be moving forward to first reading on schedule. And as a result, we do not have any issues that were brought forward to us for next week's land use committee. There are some things that are on the back burner, but we're not quite ready to address them yet. So on that note, there will not be a land use committee next Tuesday.
Any other items for open discussion? Councilor Erickson?
I'll just remind everyone that we have public services today, and we're talking about the subdivision access roads, and that's been kind of a hot item for the last couple of years. So encourage you to stay and give your input, and we'll also be having another issue to talk about as well. So just invite you to stay, please.
All right, any other items for open discussion? Councilor Jameson, are you just going to have Attorney Best just send that highlighted to the rest of the council, showing the changes?
I will, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on today, we're going to have a presentation, Shape Places Zoning, but that has been moved to the March 15th informational. So we'll move to the second presentation that we have, and that's sales tax surplus funds, street improvements, and we have Chad Huey, our city engineer.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. Chad Huey with the Engineering Division of Public Works. As Tracy Turbach with the Finance Department talked about last week, there is a surplus of capital dollars left over from 2015. Before I get to that, I just want to, every Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, you guys get a nice email from Barb Suxdorf talking about and tallying all the bids. So if you've been noticing, we've been bidding a lot of projects. A lot of the big ones have already been let, but there's a lot more smaller ones that are on their way. And just kind of a recap, we're planning about 58 blocks of concrete repairs, and that includes full depth joint repairs and joint sealing, about 186 blocks of asphalt overlay in the mill and overlay program, about 400 blocks of micro surfacing, 8 blocks of core neighborhood reconstruction, and about 15 blocks of water main replacement. The construction season has started. Work on the 12th Street Bridge began last week, and work on Maple Street will be coming here in the very near future. Okay, what our plan is for these surplus dollars, the plan is to put it into 4 different projects, with the first one being about half of that money going into our concrete pavement restoration project. And so in that project, we fund Techcrete patching, a couple good candidates. Additional candidates for this year are Benson Road from Cliff Avenue to I-229, and also on East 26th Street from Cleveland over to Bonson. Now this would be work that we would contract out, so this would be in addition to what Galen's crews will be doing this summer. Also out of that concrete repair project, we'd like to do some more joint resealing. If you notice, after some of these last heavy rains, a lot of that joint material comes out of there, and that lets a lot of the things we don't want in those joints get in there. So this is another couple projects we'd like to move forward with. Also, there's a lot of concrete joint and panel repairs out there that we can move forward with. You've seen these last year on 12th Street and in similar locations. And then kind of the other one is the Minnesota Avenue curb and gutter replacement. We do have a contract already awarded to T&R Construction to make some improvements on this, but it would be, while they're there, we could just extend quantities and have them maybe go another 1, 2, 3 blocks. That's the plan is for half of this money to go into the concrete program. Next, the plan would be about put 15% of this into our asphalt surface treatment program. This takes care of the crack sealing that's done ahead of the microsurfacing. This does the microsurfacing and then some mastic repairs and leveling out of our joints. Here's a kind of a microsurfacing project in process. So again, we'd like to put 15% of those funds into this program. Next, we'd like to put about 15% of the funds into our ADA curb ramp upgrades. We've made tremendous progress over the last few years on this. I'll kind of give you just a quick history. We have some ADA ramp issues, I'll say, in our good streets, which are areas that we don't plan on going into to do any mill and overlay or concrete work in the near future. And then we have the ADA issues that are in our, I'll say, our not so good streets. And those are the streets that when we go in to do a mill and overlay and we do the concrete work, we do the utility repairs, that's when we go in and update those ADA ramps. And so we're sitting very good. We have another project on the shelf, and this would go a long way to getting to that goal of removing all those barriers. And finally, my recommendation is also to take about 20% of those dollars and put them into the major street reconstruction program in the engineering capital plan to finish design work that's for projects that are we're going to get ready to bid in 2017. So with that, that's the plan for the $1.299 million, and with your support today, we're prepared to come forward in next week with the first reading, and then April 5th for the second reading of the ordinance and then the resolution. So with that, I'll answer any questions that I can.
Question from the council, Councilor Karski.
Chad, put the picture of the Minnesota Avenue one back up, the curb and gutter, and I know those are in very rough shape. We go in, we replace the curb and gutter, and the sidewalk's not serviceable anymore. What's the procedure or plan?
We'll be looking at that as well. I can tell you when this section of Minnesota was rebuilt, the existing curb and gutter was left there, and thus you're seeing the drastic difference in condition. And so we'll be looking at that stuff as well as we go through this corridor.
If the sidewalk has to be replaced, is that at the property owner's expense?
No, if it's already there, it's at our expense.
Yeah, okay.
And that's on any project across the city.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Urbanbach?
Thank you. Sure. I was all ready to come in here and pitch all kinds of other ideas for parks and all this. And then you put Minnesota Avenue in here. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. It just pushed me right over the edge. He knows it's the bane of my existence right now. So a couple of questions, though. Talk about, I was trying to take notes and I didn't keep up. Oh, maybe I got that. Okay. About half of it's going to be Techcrete, half of the 1.3?
We're going to,
the
goal would be to put half of that money into the concrete program.
Concrete in general. Okay.
And that would, and that's about $600,000. And so, maybe a $200,000 Techcrete project, maybe another $200,000 joint resealing project, maybe $200,000 on another concrete repair project. But we're still bidding work, and so I'm probably not prepared to give you exact details of where we would go, but half of that money would go into the concrete program, and those are the main three items that we would fund out of that program.
Okay. Then question about Minnesota Avenue. I think you might have said it and I just didn't catch it. How many blocks do you think you're going to do on Minnesota Avenue? Does it depend on how bad it is? Like they were asking about the sidewalk. If we've got to do sidewalk, we'll have to do one less, or?
You know, I think right now the contract, let's see, is about 7 or 8 blocks that TNR has. You're right, though. Probably from when we surveyed it to when we go out there, we'll probably have to do more. So we could do, you know, another 50,000, another 100,000. But a project like that is, I mean, we already have established quantities. We will go to the contractor and ask that we just extend quantities. And so, you know, we could add as much to this project as we felt comfortable with, and with what TNR feels comfortable with.
And if I could, just one other question. I kind of wanted to talk about the philosophy of microsurfacing. As much as I love it on my residential street, it's beautiful and it's wonderful to drive, and my neighborhood thinks it's the greatest thing ever, right? And so do all our neighborhoods. My question is about like Louise Avenue. We microsurfaced it not that long ago, and it's just crumbling again. And so, yes, we did, didn't we, microservice Louise Avenue?
You're talking about by the mall? Mm-hmm. We did a mill and overlay.
An overlay, okay.
Which is, that was on an old concrete street, and that was probably done 5 or 6 years ago.
So it is about to the end of its life of a mill and overlay too. That's like not very
It
long.
is, but you know, to do an overlay on a concrete street, I'd say is more of a temporary measure.
Okay.
It's not going to function like a microsurfacing does. The microsurfacing is just a wearing course. When you even if you attempt to fill in the joints on a concrete street and put 2 inches of overlay on it, those cracks, those reflective cracks, are always going to come through. And that's what you saw on Louise Avenue. But again, it was a temporary fix, and we're into the design to do something differently next year.
So clearly I misunderstood that, and I want us to be clear about the microsurfacing that we're going to do this summer if we decide we're spending this extra money. Microsurfacing is different. We do it only in certain areas. Is that correct? Is it only residential? Can you talk about that a little bit so that we get that clear?
Microsurfacing replaced the old chip seal where we put oil, chips, and roll it, and then sweep many, many times. And so this is what we have replaced that with, and do this in the local streets. And all it is when that initial road gets to be about 4 to 6 years old, we put this 3/8 of an inch wearing course down, and it's $3,000 a block. I mean, it's very good money spent on a good road, and it just extends the life of that road. And so we maybe do one microsurface, maybe we do a second microsurface, and by that time, you're ready for a mill and overlay, which is going to be considerably more expensive. So the whole thought behind this is putting good money or less money on the good roads to keep them in a good condition. And so we would never, I mean, a microsurface goes on these streets that are 4 to 6 years old, not an old concrete street that's a need for something much more than that.
Great, thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome.
it. Thank you.
Chad, if I could, Chad, could either you or Mark tell us where that Louise project is on our timeline? Is it next year between 41st and 49th?
Yes, we have a consultant on board. We've had I'd say some very positive meetings with the group that owns the Empire Mall. And they have some big plans as well, and so we're kind of working together on what we need to get done and maybe some of the things they want to get done to time those out. But the plan is we're in preliminary design. We'll be coming back with a final design agreement with the consultant here in the near future, but the plan is to open bids up in January or February of 17 and construct it then.
Thank you. Councilor Jameson?
I just have to say, as a guy who has always fought for these dollars to go to roads, Chad, you had me at hello on this whole discussion. and Tracy, I know that you sent an email out, and Mark and others I've talked about, and I've fought with over the years. Now it appears as though my time on the city council is done. I can leave now because you guys are coming forward with these kinds of proposals, and it's just perfect. And I'm just happy and excited and hoping that the rest of the council support this package. It's just exactly where we need it and when we need it. So thanks.
We did cut the tech rate in half from what you wanted, though.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from the council?
If I may, we would always welcome additional funds. I'll just say the nice thing right now is that we're in the first or second week of March, and we can put these dollars to work a lot quicker than us getting the money in, let's say June or July. And so I do appreciate the money we got in December, the additional funding for roads, and then I do appreciate your consideration today.
Councilman Rolfe?
Chad, just for kicks and giggles, can you give us a little update on potholes and how that has come along, filling those in, and if it's working or not?
I will just, Mark may have to, but I know at one point we had 3 or 4 crews out potholing, and so I think it's going pretty well. I know we're getting still a lot of calls, but Mark drives around a lot, so he can probably tell you more.
Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. Things are going good. Anytime we have weather like this, we just have a lot better sticking power, and we can get a lot more done. And so now as you drive throughout the city, you obviously see less. We're getting ready to start sweeping the city as early as next week. And so that just really starts to change the entire program. And so when it doesn't get wet, freeze, thaw, and we lose what we've essentially patched the week before, it's all good. The weather for the entire Midwest looks really good for the next 14 days. We normally get about 8 inches of snow in March, and we still may get some snow, but the weather right now looks really good. The teams are making good progress.
Councilor Erpenbach?
Question for Mark. Would you say the phone number again, the pothole hotline phone number? Put it into your phone?
Yes, right now, create a new contact, name it Pothole 367-8002. You'll call into an answering service. You can call at any time of the day, and then we take them off the next morning. And again, we have 4 crews that are running, and they'll get to it as quickly as they can.
Mark, before you leave, though, I have a couple questions. Since we started that microsurfacing, and that was supposed to extend the lifetime of these roads, mostly residential, have we done any checking to see how those first roads have held up in that, to maybe show the council how microsurfacing and the overlay is working?
We did, especially in the initial years, because we would take 2-inch cores and really check it over a series of years, and the durability of the microsurface is much better than chip seal. It's what we're finding. We also scaled up to a larger rock. So even though they're small rocks, we're up to what we call a type 3. It's a little rougher surface, but it's probably a true 3/8 of an inch that we're putting on. And, it does a fantastic job sealing all those small cracks. We're crack sealing the large cracks the year before. And then it does a great job sealing that surface up all across. The public loves it because it only takes us about an hour to impact someone's road, as opposed to the chip seal process where, we'd first put a heavy coat of oil. The purpose of the chips were really for a wearing surface, but really to blot it so the tires didn't pick up the oil. And then you'd get a lot of rock chips. We'd have to sweep those streets 4 to 6 times. It's a much cleaner process. It's a superior product. We're definitely here to stay. It can, the durability of it, you can have a street microsurfaced. The next day, a landscaper can come in and put a whole load of river rock on it and run it around with skid steers and not affect it. It's that durable. So larger cities moved to it probably 10 years ago. We moved to it probably 6 years ago. And I think what Chad said, we're going to do hundreds of blocks again this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other council? Any comments, questions? Seeing none? This, Chad, okay. Seeing none, this meeting is now adjourned. We will have Public Services Committee meeting in 10 minutes.